Out this young man who is, as I have said before, quite an unusual performer. I'm going to tell you about him, and then before he actually sings, we're going to permit your local station to have a moment with you. This young man was born in Duluth, Minnesota, but spent most of his early years in Hibbing. He started playing the guitar when he was just a child of 10, but he says it didn't do him too much good in high school. He says the only trouble with playing guitar is you don't get cheerleader girls. He is now one of the most sought-after folk artists of the present day. I'll show you two of his albums. Here is one titled, as you can see, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And he's one of those performers who seems to somehow be taken to the hearts of the young people who see him, the high school age, college age people. They somehow seem to identify with him or with parts of him or part of what he does. Here's another one of his albums titled, as you see, The Times They Are A-Changin', Bob Dylan. I'll introduce you to this young man, this very interesting young man personally, if you'll come back in 120 seconds. Ordinarily, in introducing entertainers, just to say a few words about their accomplishments, tell you where they're working currently, and say, here he is, and we point to them when they go into their act. But I thought it would be instructive in this instance to tell you a bit about this young man. I've already told you that he's from Minnesota. He is primarily a poet. He's a very popular entertainer now, but I think one of the reasons for his popularity is that he has the mind of a poet. I'm going to quote a few words about him by Ralph Gleason, music, jazz critic. And Mr. Gleason is not an easy man to please, but he says this about Bob Dylan. He talks about a particular concert up in the Berkeley, California area, a concert in which Joan Baez appeared with Bob Dylan. Because he says, together the two sang a group of songs, including With God on Our Side and Blowin' in the Wind. And for the first time, the true message of the latter song came through to this listener. Genius makes its own rules, and Dylan is a genius, a singing conscience and moral referee, as well as a preacher. He's also a very embarrassed young man now, because it's always embarrassing to sit there with your feet in cement while somebody compliments you either casually or lavishly. But I've been reading a number of stories about Bob this afternoon, and they are all of that order. A comment in Billboard, the trade publication, says, Dylan's poetry is born of a painful awareness of the tragedy that underlies the contemporary human condition. Bob, do you sing partly your own songs and partly other people's, or where do you get your material?
Well, they're all mine now.
You sing all your own material. And how long have you been writing your own music?
For about 2 years.
Just 2 years?
7 years before that, but I quit writing. And I started copying for about 2 or 3 years between.
What do you mean by the word copying in this context?
Well, I quit writing and started singing, you know, what other people had written.
Oh, I see. I think it might be interesting for the audience if I quote a word or two of one of your poems. I'm reading from the back of the jacket of one of Bob's albums. It says, the town I was born in holds no memories, but for the honkin' foghorns, the rainy mist, and the rocky cliffs. I've carried no feelings up past the Lake Superior hills. The town I grew up in is the one that's left me with my legacy visions. It was not a rich town. My parents were not rich. It was not a poor town. My parents were not poor. It was a dying town. It was a dying town. A train line cuts the ground, showing where the fathers and mothers of me and my friends had picked up and moved from North Hibbing to South Hibbing. Old North Hibbing, deserted, already dead, with its old stone courthouse decaying in the wind, long abandoned, windows crashed out, the breath of its broken walls being smothered in clinging moss. Just a few lines of poetry written by Bob Dylan. Bob, what are you going to sing for us now?
A song that's on there, The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll.
The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. What's the story of this song?
The story I took out of the newspaper, and I only changed the words.
Change the words?
Yeah, I changed the words.
I don't understand. You took a story out of a newspaper.
It's a true story.
Oh, I see.
And it happened in Maryland.
What words did you change? I still don't know what you mean by that.
Well, I changed the reporter's view into, I used it. I used it for something that I wanted to say, and I used his view, the many reporters' view, to get at what I wanted to say and turn it that way. And I used a true story, that's all. I could have used a made-up story.
Was the story, I mean, the actual incident, did it concern someone named Hattie Carroll?
Yeah.
I see. Do you want to tell us about that incident, or would you rather do that by means of a song?
Well, I could tell you about it. I could sing about it. I could do anything. If I talked about it, I would talk about it for a very long time. If I sung about it, it would only take as long as the song lasts.
I see. Well, I imagine the song tells its own story. Here it is.
Williams and Singer killed poor Hattie Carroll with a cane that he twirled round his diamond ring finger at a Baltimore hotel society gathering. And the cops were called in and his weapon took from him as they rode him in custody down to the station and booked Williams and Singer for first-degree murder. And you who philosophize disgrace and criticize all fears, take the rag away from your face. Now ain't the time for your tears. Wealthy parents who provide and protect him, and high office relations in the government of
Dylan. The party continues in 120 seconds.